Hi, everyone. What is memory reconsolidation and how does it work? Many of us have heard the term memory reconsolidation, but do you really know what it's all about? Let's dive in for a definition, how it works, and why it's important. First of all, to make matters clear, memory consolidation is a process that occurs in the brain to retain an event that then becomes a lasting memory. It's a chemical process, everything's chemical, right? Um, but if that memory is unpleasant, it carries with it the resultant emotions, whether they're fear, anger, grief, terror, whatever. So each time the memory gets triggered, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, those same emotions accompany it as if the event just happened all over again. Memory reconsolidation takes that memory and disrupts the process of recall. It doesn't change the memory. It just changes how you feel each time that memory recurs. For instance, if I have a traumatic memory of, say, abuse, which, by the way, could be triggered by a sight, smell, thought, or something someone says, I could feel scared, terrified, angry, sad. I could feel blame, grief. I could feel that all of those things or any of them all at once. Whatever emotions that memory carries with it is how I'm going to feel, just as intense as if it just happened. But if I reconsolidate that memory, now I will just remember it without feeling much of anything, like, oh yeah, it happened. So it kind of becomes untraumatic and just sort of another everyday remembrance. I'll give you an example. When our previous dog, I'll call her Brandy 1, suddenly came down with brain cancer, I looked after her. She was traumatized by not being able to move and had to do her business lying down on the floor. That was so traumatic, so devastating to her because she would never think of messing in the house. She was so grateful every time I washed her down afterwards. She wanted to show her appreciation, but she couldn't even lift her head to give me a doggy kiss. Her trauma made me feel terrible. I just wanted to grab her and both of us to hug each other and curl up in the corner and hug away all those feelings. But of course, that wouldn't work. When I took her to the vet and the diagnosis was confirmed, I elected to stay with her while she was being put to sleep because I felt she deserved that much comfort from me. Oh, she fought that medication so hard, trying desperately to stay awake, to stay alive, which made me feel even worse. I was a basket case. I mean, I was totally devastated. Both hubby and I took it very hard and vowed right then and there we would never, ever get another dog because we just couldn't bear to go through all that again, ever. Fast forward a few years of grief, about 2.5 to 3 years. And I was finally able to resolve or reconsolidate those memories because that's when I learned about AFT. Now, when I think about Brandy, it's almost like a dream. Yeah, I know what happened. I remember what happened and how traumatic it was for me personally at the time. But now, instead of that memory coming up all the time, I remember all the fun times we had with her instead of that emotionally draining time at the end of her life. In fact, instead of crying and sobbing every time I thought of her, and instead of sticking with the vow that we would never get another dog, 3 years later, guess what? We found another Brandy. She's also a chocolate lab, just like Brandy 1, but has a completely different personality. So we definitely do not confuse her with her predecessor. So how do we make reconsolidation happen? Using AFT, which by the way is short for aroma freedom technique, we take that memory and all its emotional charge or baggage, calm down the brain so we no longer feel like crap, and instill new, more positive reactions. My name is Mark Rakowski, better known on social media as Maggie Rakowski. I'm not a doctor, a therapist, or a psychologist, but I did learn this technique and am certified to use it on others. I was taught by a licensed psychologist who has been treating clients for well over 20 years and teaching this technique for many years as well. AFT does not change the memory. It does not interfere with your brain function. It doesn't make you forget things. It doesn't mess you up. And it doesn't take years of talk therapy or require drugs of any kind. It's all done with nature's gifts to us. Pure, essential oils, specific oils, inhaled in a specific order, along with a series of questions and prompts that allow the client to remain in full control of their mind and body. There is no hypnotism involved. There's no difference in the effect of this technique, whether it's done in person or by distance. In fact, I personally use Zoom for my clients. We set up a convenient time, video chat on Zoom, and an hour or so, usually, the client is feeling completely refreshed. I do check in with them once or twice a day for the next 3 days to remind them of their 2-minute homework and to check on the progress. If something needs tweaking, we handle that right away. I even had a client who was very reserved and somber looking at the beginning of the session, very downcast. She had thought of working on a specific issue, but after a discussion with her, I suggested we work on an even earlier issue, something that was even more potent, as I didn't think the one she chose could be properly reconsolidated without first resolving the earlier one. She agreed. And I'm glad she did, because less than an hour later, she was laughing and jumping for joy. No word of a lie. She was actually jumping for joy. And she told me, even after years of therapy, she had not been able to release the emotional pull of that particular memory until I used AFT on her. I checked in on her for several days after, and I'm happy to report that even many months later, she is leading a much improved, happier life. Every day brings her joy. AFT is a very powerful resource that allows us to change how we feel about the unpleasant history in our lives, whether it's caused by physical and or emotional abuse, grief, terror, or any other cause. You may have witnessed an explosive situation like parents fighting or a house on fire or someone being beaten. You may have experienced trauma as a child by watching a scary movie. It could even be something as simple as being singled out in the classroom. It could be from being bullied. It could be from unwanted emotion of any kind. It could even be something someone told you and you believed. Whatever the cause, AFT calms the emotional response to the memories and then reconsolidates them into something much more manageable. Almost everyone has embarrassing moments they'd rather forget. I know I do. Almost everyone has some form of trauma. I do too, whether it's a big T trauma like incest, abuse, war, death, or a little T trauma like being punished for some misdeed or being teased. Being told we're stupid and will never amount to anything is also a form of trauma and often results in self-limiting beliefs about oneself. AFT deals with all memories and emotions. If you or someone you know could benefit from an AFT session, please pass this along and contact me at hello@withmarg.com. That's HELLO WITHMARG.com. Use AFT as the subject so the email doesn't get inadvertently in the junk pail, because I get hundreds of emails every day and a lot of them are junk. So delete, 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 delete. And I don't want to delete yours if it's important. I look forward to helping you and your loved ones. Have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon.